Hey, how are you?
Hi, Chuck.
How are you doing, Kim? Hi, Corey.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm
It's
doing
nice
okay.
to actually meet you.
Can't find the words to say. Pack up.
Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
met you before, Chuck. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
very
we
nice
really
to meet you
appreciate you
both.
coming on. We were trying to wrangle Ray in, but he's on a flight. Have him pop in a little. He's
Beauty.
awesome.
So, Chuck, we're not live. We just pre-record everything. So if there's anything somebody says we want to cut out, it's an option. We don't go live. So we know you're super busy with everything that's going on in the hockey world. We kind of want to just step back and talk about, you growing up in the hockey world and, give you a little time off from all the stress of everything that's going on right now. So,
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we won't bombard you about that.
yeah.
No problem.
First off, I just want to say we had Bruce Boudreau on the other day, and man, did he ever have a lot of really great things to say about you. He was the coach back in Minnesota. You're in the GM, so he never did find out. He wanted to know if, did you think he was a good coach?
He's like, I don't know if he liked me or not.
Yeah, he goes, I don't know.
Bruce he's a beauty.
Yeah.
An absolute beauty. He's a very, very good coach. Very good coach. And good person, and just loves to talk hockey. He's one of those guys, knows the history of the game, and obviously played in the 70s, and he's coached now in his third decade of coaching. So he's got great stories, and it was always a lot of fun to travel, go for dinners. The night before a game, you're on the road, take the staff out for dinner. And we'd rarely talk about the team. At that point, we were always talking about the Maple Leafs or, Boreas Salming or, coaching in the ECHL or the American League. And he had such great stories.
Yeah, his history goes back pretty far. But speaking of going out for dinner, then we had David Boreanaz on a couple days ago. And he said he had dinner with you not that long ago out in LA, was it?
Yeah. That was just before the pandemic pause. That year we were out. So that would have been the 1920 season. So it was literally New Year's Eve. We were out there the 30th and 31st, I think, of December, and saw him and hopeful we're out there again this year around the same time. So we're hopeful of reconnecting. And he gets out here a bit too.
Yeah.
Comes out to our practices and our camp and from time to time, but it's always fun to see him out in LA.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So between him, Ray, and Bruce, everyone has been singing your praises. So we're like, all right, we got to have Chuck on. Everybody loves him. So, and you've known Ray for quite some time, right?
Yeah, Ray.
For everyone listening, yeah.
Yeah, Ray hired me in 2006. I was working for the Anaheim Ducks at that time, and he brought me to Pittsburgh just after he was named the general manager. So he brought me out as the assistant general manager, and we knew each other because we had both been assistant general managers in the game. So we knew each other. Obviously, he was the son of a pretty successful hockey guy, and so was I. So we connected a bit, and but we didn't know each other great, and then we just became like great friends. And he was my boss, but from that time on, we've kept in touch, and I worked with him briefly again in New Jersey after I was fired in Minnesota, and he brought me out there for about 6 months before I came to the Flyers. So I've been able to work for him in a couple of different locations, and great man, a great leader, a great general manager, in my opinion, one of the best in the game, but just a great person, so honest. People love to work for him, and he's fun. He's so much fun too.
Yeah.
And just an encyclopedic memory too. Remembers everything. Like he'll say, "Remember that conversation we had in July of 2006?" And I'm like,
Not really.
Yeah, sure. I remember that one. He remembers every detail about everything, and calls we had with agents when we were trying to sign players in Pittsburgh, and I remember outlines and a lot of it, but he remembers every detail. So he gets it almost gets stressful sometimes talking with him because you're having a beer with him, and he's like, remember this, remember that. Like you're just, you're on edge. You're trying to remember all the time, everything that he, but I think he's borderline genius but just, again, great love of the game. And when I got the job here in Philly, telling me all the stories about growing up and telling me I live in an area now where there was an old racetrack, I guess.
Oh yeah,
the Garden State track was right there, and it burnt down. And then he was telling me a story about driving to school and the day it burnt down, and So anyway, he's incredible. He's got great stories.
Well, he was our very first guest on our podcast, which worked out perfect for us because between his stories and his memory and his history and his humor, like it just was like, wow, this is what it's going to be like. We're doing the right thing. He was just awesome. Like I don't even know how long we talked to him for, but he's such a great guy. And like you said, like stories from the parade and the details and every little thing were just, it was cool. Yeah.
No, he remembers it all. He remembers it all. He's been great for me at two times in my career where I was kind of struggling a bit. He kind of brought me on board and helped me out. And so I owe him a lot, but just a great friendship and it's wonderful. Wonderful. Hopefully one day we can work together again.
Yeah. Oh God, that'd be great.
He just sounds like an amazing guy. Like I got caught, I think, in the middle of the text between you guys and he sounds like he has a really good memory.
No, absolutely. It's unbelievable. And just memories, like even going back from his dad and his dad's playing career and things that his dad must have told him when he was a kid. He remembers everything. Like he goes back literally decades of hockey history that he can recall but he's remarkable and great general manager in my opinion, and did so much for the Penguins and turning that franchise around and helping to turn it around, and won a cup and of course they won a couple more after he left, but he's a pretty successful guy in his own right.
And you were there when they won the cup too, right? Both of you were there for that?
Yeah, we were both there. That was my last year. I moved on to Minnesota right around that time to be the GM there, but it was just a lot of fun because the year before we played Detroit in the 2008 Stanley Cup Finals, and we lost in Game 6, kind of a heartbreaking way of losing. We had won Game 5 in overtime to keep the series alive, make it 3-2. And I think Marian Hossa hit the post in the last minute of the game that would have sent the game to overtime. And Detroit was literally, just inches better than us that year. And then the next year we got another shot at them and down 3-2 in the series and found a way to win Game 6 and won into Detroit and won Game 7 in Detroit. So it was incredible. And, starting off with Ray, that first year in Pittsburgh, we were there. Like we weren't very good. The team was a 60-odd point team the year before we got there. We didn't know if we get 70 points or 80 points, but we didn't have any illusions of grandeur. We didn't think we were very good. We knew we were going to be better and we were going to improve, but we actually got to the trade deadline that year, and it was really kind of funny that all of a sudden, like, we're in a playoff position, and Ray looked at me and said, like, Chuck, like, we don't have any depth. Like, we need a defenseman. We need another goalie. If our goalie gets hurt, we got to go out and get another forward. Like, we just weren't prepared because we weren't expecting to be.
Right.
We went out and made all these trades at the deadline and brought in a bunch of players, and it was just hilarious. We were laughing like we weren't ready for this at all. Like we got pretty good pretty quickly, and under Mike Terrian and Mike Hill as our coaches, and Andre Savard, and lost to Ottawa in the first round that year, but it set us up. And the next year we got all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, and the third year we won the Stanley Cup. So it was like a meteoric rise. Crosby and Malkin help a little bit. I tell Ray, I said, you were really good, Ray, but I said they were pretty good players too. But, he made a lot of amazing moves, a lot of amazing trades, and we picked up a lot of great pieces along the way, including a guy like Chris Kunitz, and obviously Hossa was a big addition at the trade deadline, and some defensemen like Hal Gill, and we picked up George Larac and Gary Roberts in earlier years, and signed Peter Sikora. So, we made a lot of moves, but was just so much fun working with him, and just, he was a man that when he wanted something, he just went out and made all these trades, and I was so impressed. I mean, he would literally, we probably made 12, 15 trades in the 3 years we were there, signed a bunch of free agents, and he made up his mind. He just went and did it. And so it was always a lot of fun to work with, and kept you involved, but he just was a man of action. So it was never boring.
Right. Yeah, I can't see him ever being boring. But that time must have really bonded you too. Like when you win, just like the Flyers team that won back in the 70s, they're bonded together. So I'm sure going through that with him kind of cemented your friendship too. Yeah,
and we had a young guy in the office at that point, Jason Boudreau, who's moved on to be a general manager in Buffalo, and now he's out working with Ronnie Francis in Seattle. And we had Tom Fitzgerald, and Dan Bilesma, of course, was our coach, and Mike Yo, and just a bunch of great people that were there that got to work with him. Dan McKinnon was one of our top player personnel guys. So we're all very tight to this day, and get along great. And but yeah, you have those memories together, and just even our families growing up together. And I had younger kids, and Ray's kids were younger, and we would go to the American Hockey League meetings every year because they were held down in Hilton Head. So there's the news flash there. When you have your American League annual meetings in Hilton Head every year, surprisingly, we both made it all the time. Down at the beach for a week and attended a couple meetings along the way. But we just had a blast, and families got close, and but great memories, because again, we walked in, it was a 60-point team, and next thing you know, we're in the playoffs, and the next year we're in the finals, and the third year we won a cup. So not a lot went wrong. Everything sort of went right. It was not because of us, just that was the way the team was trending, but just to be a part of it and have that much fun, and just basically feeling like on top of the world all the time. And Pittsburgh's a pretty interesting market, because there's, you obviously have a pro football team that's very successful, and a baseball team that's been there forever. But, it's a little bit of a smaller town. The fans are passionate, and there's 3 teams in town instead of 4 or 5. And so when we were doing well, you're on top of the world. Everybody knows who you are and knows the team, and the building's jammed, and had some great playoff games in there, some great series with the Flyers actually, and the Rangers, and all the big rivals played, and you had to beat all those teams to get to where you wanted to get to. So just the memories of playing in the old igloo, and the building's just jammed. It's humid. The AC doesn't really work all that much. Ice is pretty average, and it was great.
They're the best games. That's the best place to watch a game. Like the old Spectrum was just so much fun. I love it. The sticky floors, the stale cigarette smoke in the air.
I know. Still lingering from the 70s, even when you're in the 90s there in the Spectrum.
That's the Buffalo. I love the Buffalo Odd. I remember in the Buffalo Odd, they always had sound barriers up top, and when the crowd got loud, they'd start moving, and it was just there was so much character in those rinks back then.
Yeah, absolutely. They were all kind of misshapen a little bit. They weren't, they weren't sort of the standard size, and the benches weren't right. The home bench was always bigger than the smaller bench, and the visiting dressing room was like rat infested and tiny. It's just like when you were on the road, you really, the team you were playing, even when you went into Buffalo, they had home ice advantage. Same thing in the Spectrum, the old Boston Garden, and now we got all these great, beautiful rinks, but they're pretty much homogenized, and everything's the same. The facilities are great, but you go in.
That character isn't there. That old school character from back in the day.
Exactly. Some of the old school fear too. Just going in some of those barns. It wasn't a lot of fun for the opposing teams.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people on that played against the Flyers back in the 70s and early 80s, and they said it was not pleasant.
It was not a good time.
No, I was just thinking back, my dad's team in Atlanta, they came in as an expansion team in 72, 73, and first year didn't make the playoffs, but the second year they did make the playoffs. They improved pretty quickly, and the first round they drew the distinct honor of playing the Philadelphia Flyers, and that was the 73-74 season, which of course was the season that the Flyers won the cup. And I was just looking back at just the other day, and the Flyers swept them. But there was a couple little mini brawls, and the Flyers won the first 2 games easily in Philly and won Game 3 easily in Atlanta. But Game 4, the Flames were actually up 3-0 late in the third. The Flyers scored to make it 3-1. They tied it up in the third. And I'll never forget Clarkie. Bob Clark sent Dave Schultz in on a breakaway. Schultz, he got an overtime breakaway goal.
Nice.
The Atlanta Flames. So not only would they beat you up, but then they're, the Hammers out there scoring a breakaway goal in overtime to win the game and knock the Flames out. But I remember at least 2, maybe 3 bench clearing brawls over the years in Atlanta with the Flyers, and just crazy. A different era, but they were so good and tough, but so good.
Yeah.
You remember all those games, so.
That's like when the Philly flu, they say, like players would come into town and all of a sudden come down with the flu and couldn't play.
A couple guys weren't ready to play.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Claire.
I was just thinking, you were born in Montreal. Did you play hockey? Your dad, with your dad being Cliff, did you play hockey? Did you ever, think of it as a career, or did you really like the management sort of style starting out?
Well, I tried to play. I was just a really bad player. The NHL wouldn't accept me, but I'll never forget. We moved to Atlanta in '72, so I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And it may have been about a year later, maybe when I was 6, I went out to learn to play hockey for the first time and play. And my dad was on the road with the Flames. So I don't know if it was training camp in September, October, whatever it was in Atlanta. Yeah. And my mom was trying to piece together the equipment for me to wear to go for my first practice. And she mistakenly gave me a football helmet. I think it was a Washington Redskins football helmet. So here's the son of the GM of the Atlanta Flames going for his first practice, and I had a football helmet on. And so kind of an auspicious start to my career. Got off to a blazing start, standing around with my ankles bent in. But I played up until college, and wasn't a very good player, but loved it. And when I couldn't play anymore, then after college, I got into initially as a player agent for a couple of years, and then Bob Clark gave me an opportunity to work with the Florida Panthers. He was the GM for our inaugural year in Florida, and I was one of his assistant, actually his only assistant. I was called assistant to the general manager. I was 26 years old and working in the NHL for Bob Clark.
Wow.
In Fort Lauderdale. So life was pretty good. Yeah.
So now, did you want to follow in your dad's shoes, or did you just kind of fall into that?
I really did. I knew growing up I was never a great player. I played as long as I could. Played a little bit of junior hockey and then tried to play collegiately and wasn't very good. So you could see the writing on the wall at a pretty young age. So growing up in Atlanta, my dad let me, particularly on weekends when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to go to weeknight games until I was about, I think, 11 or 12. Mm-hmm. But growing up, I would sit in the Omni in Atlanta. My dad would have one seat. His assistant GM was David Poyle, who's now a longtime GM in the NHL, now with Nashville. And I would get the third seat. So I pretended that I was part of the staff. I'd sit with those two for every game. I'd go to every morning skate. He would take me on a road trip every year with the team. And so I always wanted to follow his footsteps and be in the NHL, and met a lot of people along the way, and got into the player agent business. And while I was a player agent, I actually met Bob Clark and a couple of the scouts. At that point, Clark, he was actually, I think he was with Minnesota initially when I met him. Then I think he went back to the Flyers as a senior vice president because he had been let go as a GM before. But I met him and got to know him enough that he hired me. So I got my break, and so forever as thankful as I am to Ray Shero. Ray wouldn't have known me if it wasn't for Bob Clark. So he gave me my big break, and here I am now 28, 29 years later, still pretty much 28, 29 continuous years working in the National Hockey League.
Wow. Did you move around a lot? How long? I'm not completely familiar with how many years your dad was in Atlanta and all that. So you were born in Montreal, but you didn't grow up there. So did you move around?
Yeah, we moved to St. Louis in '69. He was the assistant GM with the St. Louis Blues. And Bobby Orr scored a very, very famous goal against the St. Louis Blues in overtime where he's flying through the air with his arms raised.
Mm-hmm.
That was the third consecutive year the Blues made the Stanley Cup Finals. And the ownership didn't realize why they lost all three. They were an expansion team, and 2 of the years they played Montreal, and the Canadiens knocked them out. The third year they played the big bad Bruins. The Bruins knocked them out. My dad got fired after that because they didn't understand why, they 3 times. Why can't you guys win one of them? And
you made it 3 times to the finals. That's not so easy to do.
No, exactly. So we were in St. Louis for a bit, and then he moved to Atlanta in '72, and then that franchise was sold and bought by a group of owners in Calgary. So we moved to Calgary, and the Flames became the Calgary Flames in 1980. And then from there, my family was there 10 years, but I moved off to college and then worked as an agent for a bit, moved down to Florida and then California and then Pittsburgh, then Minnesota. And now here we are in Philadelphia. So my wife, she's a pretty good woman for sticking with me. We move around a lot.
I'll tell you, the wives don't get enough credit of professional athletes or in the management, whatever. Don't get enough credit.
I know, packing up with kids and new schools and all that. So
I was lucky. My dad, I was born in '72, so my whole life we've been in Philly. I never had to move, so I was fortunate. And my mom's from the area, so we kind of got lucky in that sense. But I know there's a lot of So, but
that's so funny. Chuck, I was thinking of your story when you very first played hockey. I was in St. Catharines. I remember the very first time my dad got my equipment, showed me the night before how to put it on. I was probably 5 or 6, showed up. Dennis Hull was the instructor, and I had no idea how to put my equipment on. Like, I had no clue. So Dennis Hull had to dress me the very first time. And I'd never skated, so I was standing out there with the stick. So when you said that,
you for that?
I must have been 5 or 6, I think. And I remember I remember the stick was a pro stick just cut in half, so the blade was almost as long as the stick, and I was like, oh my gosh. And so when you were telling that story, I'm like, man, Dennis Hall was the first guy to dress me because I had no idea how to put this stuff on. So
pretty cool story though. Dennis.
Yeah. And then it ended up years later, Glenn Healy was my goalie coach in Halliburton Hockey School. Looking back, I didn't look, and I was like, oh my gosh, Glenn Healy was my goalie coach. So I blame him that I was never a goalie. I never made it to the NHL. So. And I was going to say, you went to Harvard, so obviously very, very intelligent guy. Is that something, not everyone gets into Harvard. How did that pan out for you?
That was great. It was always my mom always wanted me to go there. And so I, never know if you ever have a chance to go to a school like that. I really didn't know much about it until like high school when I was growing up in Calgary, Alberta, and all my friends were going to the University of Calgary or the University of Alberta. So I just said, well, I may as well apply. And it was pretty cool. I was able to get in and it's one of those things where you show up on campus and you're overwhelmed and intimidated because you're assuming every kid is smarter than you that's there.
Yeah. Right.
And it may have been true. Everybody may have been smarter than me. I'm pretty sure there were some brilliant people, and I'm certainly not that. But I would say even the whole first year, my first semester and second semester, you're taking classes, and it takes a while to get your groove, I think, and get your confidence and feel that you can kind of compete with that caliber of student. But it was a great place to go to school. Boston's a wonderful city. And so much history, and learned a lot. Took some great classes, great professors, and some of my best friends, probably my best friends to this day, with the exception of Ray Shero and some of the people I've met in hockey, are my old roommates from college. We still get together every year, Memorial Day weekend, provided the team I'm working with isn't in the semifinals or finals or whatever's going on during Memorial Day. It's the one trip I always like to miss because that means our team's still playing.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of years, unfortunately, I'm available and get to go, but we get together every Memorial Day, and about 10 of us with our families, and got our kids that show up every year, and it's a blast. So, but it was a great 4 years.
Oh, it's funny though. Ray lives in Boston now, though, doesn't he?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Such a small world.
I wanted to ask you, did you ever get up to Muskoka? I know your dad gets up there. He used to rent my dad's boat for the month of August, and he would rent Billy Harris's cottage up in Rosso. Did you ever get a chance to go up to Muskoka or experience the Muskokas? Yeah.
A lot of years. I missed a few years off and on, depending on where we were living, and a couple of years we were moving. And I was at Billy's place quite a few times.
Okay.
Now I'm hoping to get up. He's up in the Gravenhurst area this year, and I'm hoping to get up there. But remember spending time on Lake Joe, Muskoka, all of them, all the lakes there. So he's moved around, but that's God's country. That's wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. Well, Kim always, when I grew up, Muskoka was the spot, but I also used to go down to the Jersey Shore.
Sure.
Kim always is, Jersey Shore. That's, her summer spot. So I've been trying to explain to her, you have to come up to the Muskokas and see the Muskokas up here in Canada.
I keep hearing how beautiful it is.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Pictures, or my daughter loves the lakes and hiking and all that, so I have to get her up there.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, so beautiful. The Jersey Shore may be a little bit different pace than a lot of Muskoka.
A little bit different.
Both beautiful.
Well, we grew up, our summers, as soon as hockey season was over, was right around the same time as school ended. So we would go down, and we spent our summers at the Jersey Shore. We didn't go back to Montreal that often. Like, we would or they would come down here and visit us at the Jersey Shore. So that was that's how I grew up. That was our summers.
It's remarkable. Everybody I speak to that I've met in the Cherry Hill and Voorhees and Haddonfield area here, everybody seems to go to the shore, grew up on the shore, and so it's a whole new lingo getting used to, and trying to think about all the different towns and all the different beaches, and but no, it's a great way of spending your summer for sure.
And it's the shore, it's not going to the beach or it's the shore.
We were talking about that the other day. I don't think there's many places. Maybe the Boston area a little bit where people call it the shore. In most places we're going to the beach or we're going to our beach house, but here it's the shore.
Yeah. I have people from different areas, and my friend from Utah, she was like, she just can't wrap her brain around it. She's like, it's just not. I'm like, well, to us, it's what it is, So your dad now is up with Toronto, with the Maple Leafs. What's he doing with them at the time?
Well, he's turning 86 in a couple of weeks, and they just renewed him for another year. He was pretty proud of that.
Nice.
I think it keeps him young. He just obviously his roles is he doesn't travel as much, and prior to the pandemic, he lives down in Scottsdale, and he goes up to Toronto for 7-10 days every month, and watches all the other games from Scottsdale on the TV, and this last year was a little bit tougher. Obviously, wasn't able to travel with the border essentially being shut down. So, but he loves it. He still watches every Maple Leaf game. He watches all the Flyers games now, and I still bounce ideas off him, and he's sharp. Like, I ran an idea by him about a couple of weeks ago. He said, "Why would you ever do that? That doesn't make any sense." So he's still got a real good opinion and knows the game, and again, it's remarkable how I think working and being around younger people, as he puts it, most people are younger than him now, and working in the game and working around the players and the coaches, and it keeps him energized, it keeps him young, and it keeps his brain going. So it's been a godsend that he could continue to work for the Maple Leafs.
Yeah. I agree. Like, have it continue to work like that, and even my dad's around, younger people all the time and stuff like that, and I definitely think there's something to that. Do they still call your dad the Silver Fox?
Yeah. And still, the hair is still perfect. It's more white than silver now, but it's pretty pristine. I'm pretty impressed with it.
Good for him.
Still got the flow going.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So do you know, obviously you know my dad, what's your interactions with him been?
Yeah, that's been a really fun part of it because being around the Flyers and not an original 6 team, but as close as you can get to an original 6 team.
Mhm.
You know, the Flyers and probably Pittsburgh would be sort of the next most storied franchises after the original 6 teams. And of course, growing up in Atlanta, the Flyers, I don't know that the Flyers treated the Flames as much of a rival because they were so much better. But in Atlanta, the Flyers were the biggest rival.
Oh, okay.
You know, and then, you know, through the years, some of the teams I've been on, whether it's Pittsburgh or the Florida Panthers, you know, played the Flyers in the playoffs. So it's always kind of been a team I've known very well and known all the players. And now meeting your dad or Bill Barber, and obviously I've known Clarkie a long time and Paul Holmgren a long time and Joe Watson and all the various players that are around that you get to know. Some of the more recent players, you know, whether it's Brad Marsh and some of the other guys that are around, you see them on the golf courses or a lot of them come to the game. And it's just remarkable how active the alumni are and how much great they do in the community, first of all. But you know, again, they're at the games. You bump into them and they know the team and they're always coming over and saying hello. So not many franchises have that. And when I worked in Minnesota, there was a lot of former Minnesota hockey players, whether it was the North Stars, but the Wild had only been in existence for 10 years when I got there. So you just didn't have a lot of alumni. A lot of them were still playing, you know, or maybe on a different team. So it's kind of cool with the history and in our practice facility, we got all the replica Stanley Cups. We got the pictures of all the players that played here, all the team pictures. And you know, I think as a franchise, we've done a pretty good job of recognizing the great players that came before and honoring the history and keeping the alumni involved. And it's been a lot of fun to kind of tap into that.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, it's not just the Stanley Cup team. It's the Lindros era. It's every era. Danny Briere, everyone that kind of played here. And so many of the guys actually end up living here, which is a testament to the area and the people here. I know everyone's tough, as you know.
Yeah.
They're very, very brutal and tough, but they love you and they always love you. You know, it's just a matter of they're not quiet about their opinions.
No, but I love that.
Yeah.
I love that element of it. You know, and in the Midwest for the last 10 years before I came here, there's a lot more people are polite. It's a little bit more passive aggressive. And
right.
So, but you know, they're passionate too. They just do it in a different way. Here, I call it aggressive. There's nothing passive about it. You know exactly where you stand, but the fans care, you know, and when you lose a game, they're not happy, but that's the way it should be, you know, and the fact that they care and they keep coming out, they keep buying tickets, they keep wearing jerseys and watching you play. And so they're going to have an opinion and they should, and they're the reason we're all here. But it's a lot of fun. It's a great market, passionate market, and it's hilarious. I went to an Eagles game a couple of years ago, my first Eagles game, and I think I can't remember who they were playing. See, Ray would remember.
You know the score.
What you were sitting, what you were wearing.
Yeah, how many penalties.
The fans were, the Eagles were even up, and there was like a poor pass and incomplete. And fans were all booing and yelling and screaming and really getting into it. I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. So it's not just our team.
No, it's just, I think personally, I think it's the Flyers and Eagles get the most passion. I mean, the other teams, obviously, we love our sports, but I mean, you can't deny the passion. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Here.
Well, two years ago, too, just before we had the pandemic pause, we had, I think we won 9 games in a row. And it was towards the end of that winning streak. We had a home game, and we were up 3 goals in the third period, and we had a power play. And it was awful. Like, I mean, we couldn't make a pass, and we couldn't get a shot, and the fans started booing. And we were up like 3, and we were about to win. I think it was our 7th or 8th game in a row. I'm like, really? Like,
tough crowd.
Really? Just like any scholarship here, like just everybody just smiled for They're booing us in the third.
It's whatever's happening at that moment, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, well, at least you again, at least they're not hiding anything or pretending like they're.
Yeah.
This is all hard.
Well, I mean, the passion came out too with everything with Oskar. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Oskar Strong and how much everybody's. I mean, that wasn't just Philly. That was across the league, across the world. Actually, the support that he had, and he always, attributes a lot of that to the team and how you guys treated him and helped him through that. So happy to see him where he is today. Obviously.
Yeah, it was really cool. The first game he. After the diagnosis and after some of his treatments, he showed back up and he was in the suite that night and standing ovation he got. And he just said it's still probably the most emotional moment of his life, just kind of seeing the support and how people were embracing him. But no, there's no question. I can't relate. I haven't had to go through anything like that, but just what he's told me, just going through that battle and the tough times, but kind of remembering back to some of those moments when he did show up and, because the latter part of the chemo and the radiation and all that was really tough on him. Yeah. And, and he had some of those memories from being at games, a month or two prior and the support. And he said it really, kind of was something that helped him get through it. But anyway, he's in a better place, thankfully. And a young man, hopefully with still a long career ahead of him, never mind a long life ahead of him.
Yeah, because not only a great player and young, but he just exudes, happiness and that smile and just goodness about him. So not that you want to wish that on anyone, obviously, but just to see him go through that was, and I don't know if like I was, my company, we did the Oskar Strong teas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that, it just was a very emotional time for us just to see how it took off and to see, Crosby and those guys all wearing the tees and just happy to help support Oskar as much as we could. So I'm happy that he is where he is now. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no kidding. And that was a very cool effort on your part too, to kind of get the word out and allow people to wear the shirts and participate kind of in, showing their support for Oskar. But I actually had one on earlier this morning. So,
did you? Oh, good. They're so comfy too. I mean,
yeah, they're awesome. They're awesome.
Yeah,
it's good.
Well, I know obviously, it's a busy time of the year and like we said, the passion with Philly and all that. So, we're ready for this new season, ready to jump in. And I don't know. I love our team so much and I love the guys and I'm excited to see, where we go in the fall. So
I hope so. I'm so excited. Last season's over. What a miserable.
Oh.
We were terrible. It was
rough.
Between all the restrictions and the testing and a lot of people had it way worse than we did, but it just it wasn't a lot of fun. We had about 20 of our players get COVID and it just seemed like it was one of those years where it just, again, so many people had it worse than we did, but it'll be nice to kind of get back to some sense of normalcy and playing hockey and having a much better team and having fans.
And it was rough too. Like you said, we were on that roll right before COVID, just like we couldn't lose if we tried,
I know. No,
and then COVID hit and, it was rough.
Well, and I'm up here in Toronto and they're pretty hard on the players and on the team up here too. So, and Toronto started out with a great run. And like I said, I always kept saying, it's just an odd season for players, to have to be away from families, doing the testing, the quarantine. It's very different. The Canadian teams playing the same teams all winter. Like I said, we got faith in you, Chuck. I think next year it's going to be the year, buddy.
Yeah.
It'll be nice not to have to do Grubhub on the road. We'd go to hotels and you couldn't leave the hotel. So, there's about 20 different bags of food, Grubhub everywhere. The players are grabbing some. You're trying to make sure you got the right order. So it'd be nice to actually be able to, when you're on the road, to at least walk out and grab a slice of pizza or go for dinner somewhere. So,
what was it like in the bubble? Was that like when up there? What was that like?
The bubble in Toronto was outstanding. Like I have no complaints. We stayed at a beautiful hotel. We were basically right on the lake shore in Lake Ontario in Toronto, and we had, it was a luxurious hotel. Had it all to ourselves. The restaurants were open. they had a soccer stadium that was kind of part of our part of our little fenced in area. So we could go over and you could kick the soccer ball around. They had the grill open. We could watch games on the big screen TV. They had a track. You could run around every morning. And it was, I don't know. It's
I want to go there.
Yeah. I had a view of the lake. I had a nice room with the view of the lake. The food was great.
Yeah.
We were treated like kings. So that part, actually being in physically in that bubble for 7 weeks, it was hard being away from your family, but you had zero complaints.
Now, how do you feel as far as playing in the playoffs, being in that bubble and just not having the distractions? Do you think that was a positive or negative to being in the playoffs and going home to your families in a typical year?
You know, it was probably a little easier that way, especially the guys that, you know, if they have young kids and you literally couldn't help. You couldn't do anything for your wife or for your kids, or you know, there was nothing you could do. Zoom calls, you know, and FaceTime and stuff like that. But so it probably made it easier, but it was really weird because in our hotel, the teams that we were playing were in our hotel. So you're walking down. We had to go test every day. We had to do a temperature check every day, and you'd be waiting in line, and you'd be right next to a guy that the players that you're going to try to run through the boards in about eight or 9 hours. So everyone's really professional, obviously, but it's a real weird because it is emotionally charged. And so that part was strange. And playing again, with no fans, playing in that building, because this year we had some fans after a while, but in the bubble, there was nobody. And we were all sitting in our own little suite, and the visiting team's management or your opposing team's management would be in a suite, like 3 suites down, so you could glare at them, and if you yelled, they'd be looking at you. And if I yelled at the ref could hear me. So you have to be careful because they know they're staring at you. So you better be careful what you're saying. Parts of it was odd, but it was. I hope to never do it again. But you know, when I'm 75 or whatever, there'll be stories I can tell from there that people. They said, "Really, you did that?"
Yeah.
You know, probably for all of us, we'll all have our pandemic stories. But.
Oh, for sure. But like especially in the playoffs and in Philly. I mean, we know how passionate the fans are and how loud it gets in there. Like when we went to the finals, what year was that? I guess my son about 11 years ago, and lost.
2010.
Yeah, 2010. And my son was young. He was like under a year, and they didn't have those like things to cover their ears out then. And I swear his ears got damaged from those games because it was so loud. Like my ears were ringing. But to go from that to having no fans in the playoffs, especially a city that's used to getting loud and rowdy and excited and the cheering and the booing and so
on TV they put the audio in on TV like there was fans. So
it was kind of weird.
Thinking they didn't do that in the rink.
No, we did. There actually was some fan noise pumped in. So
okay.
Yeah, it made it a little bit different. But when we lost Game 7 against the Islanders in the second round in the bubble, that's where you kind of really felt it because that would have been a home game. That would have been at Wells Fargo, and I don't know if it would have made a difference, but you know how loud that building would have been going out for Game 7. And they scored the first goal, and we have home ice. The building's dead quiet. They got the first goal, and we never got into it. But I always wonder, maybe the fans, we would have been charged up and found a way to get that first goal, and then we would have been the team moving on to play Tampa Bay in the third round. But
I definitely
could have. I
definitely think that could have played a part in it, though. Just the energy and the vibes from the fans, but
100%.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, this year, hopefully, all keeps going well. We'll have our somewhat normal season coming up, and I know everybody's ready for that. I'm sure as you are too.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Chuck. Did you have anything else, Cor?
No, I didn't. Chuck, that was great. I really appreciate you coming on. That was awesome. And like I said, we didn't want to bombard you with a lot of up to date what's going on these days. So, as a Flyer fan, I got faith in you, Chuck.
We all do.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kim. Yeah, thank you, Corey, and enjoyed it very much. Thanks for having me on, and happy to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. We'll have you and Ray on together. That'll be
Yeah.
fun.
Yes, that would
Yeah.
be very fun. I'm excited.
But he'll be asking all those, remember this, remember that, and I'll be like, yeah,
Putting you on the spot.
exactly.
I envy people with those kind of memories because mine's terrible. I have a best friend that I know all my memories through her because she'll tell me. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right, Chuck.
All right,
Okay.
take care.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks so
All
much,
the
Chuck.
best.
Thank
Okay.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.